It can change. And the reason why I bring FIFA up is there's this feature in FIFA, and I got the new one, FIFA 22. I've not played it much now, being a dad. And Kevin being away, there's no time for FIFA. There is no time for FIFA. But there's this thing in FIFA called dynamic potential. And basically, I've preached on this before, but I want to reiterate this, is that I've got an example on the screen. We've got a player here, Phil Foden, who's a quality player, isn't he? I didn't watch the game yesterday, but a good pass, to Saka, and I think he got another assist. You can't really see it because our screen isn't very well. The overall rating, so his kind of ability, is at 76 overall, okay? His potential here on FIFA is 90. So that means that in the old game, no matter what happened, no matter how bad he played, he will get to 90, which is a good score. 90 out of 100 is good, right? Not as good as me, but it's good. 90 potential, okay? Now in FIFA, now there's this thing called dynamic potential, which means that he can do things along the way to either exceed that potential, meet that potential, or guess what? Fall short of his potential. So the old regime of FIFA was fate. In other words, Phil Foden, he's going to be world class no matter what happens. No matter if he has a pot belly like Luke, he's going to get to 90% potential. And I wonder, that's a little bit like us, It's a little bit like us. Because we have a potential on our life, and it isn't fate again. Sometimes we just think God has this potential, God has these plans for our life, and no matter what we do, we'll get there in the end. I don't think that's true. Because you see it from many great men and women of God who've been on that and then gone like that. Now you could say, well, that was the plan of God, but I don't think so. I don't think so. And the sad thing is, just to make the tension even extra in the room, is that some of us in this room will never ever meet our potential. We'll never do the things that God has called us to do. We'll never reach the awesome potential, the destiny, of the purpose that God has given us for our lives. Some of us will. Jesus will say to us, well done, thy good and faithful servant. You've given it your all. You've met the potential. You've walked in the destiny that I've given you. You've worked out the plan that I have for your life, and you've gone and you've done it. So I want to help us this morning. I want to preach to myself as well, because every time that I preach, I have to go through this stuff and think, is it right? Am I right really saying it? And do I actually believe it myself? I'm actually going to apply this stuff to myself. So I want to help us, basically, to make sure that we are on that upward curve. We are kind of moving forward in the things that God has planned for us. And the first step to that is to understand that we have an awesome God-given destiny. Sometimes we won't ever reach our God-given destiny because we don't believe we have a God-given destiny. Even if you don't know Jesus this morning, I believe you have a God-given destiny. Because the moment you say yes to Jesus, his plan, and it doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect, but his plan will start to unravel in your life. He'll begin to speak to you. Even your past hurts that you've gone through, your suffering, or the past mistakes that you've made, he'll begin to talk to you and speak into your heart about things that you can do for him. Things that you can do for people to help them to know God, and to help them also to know their destiny as well. So the first step to reaching our God-given destiny is to know that we have a destiny. A God-given destiny. Isaiah 43 verse 1 says this. But now this is what the Lord says. Kevin's spoken on this before. He created you. It's the first thing. Your identity is that He created you. He formed you, O Jacob. O Israel, fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name, and you are mine. If only we begin to live in that identity, that we are created by God, that we are formed by God, not just our physical appearance, but our life, our personality, who we are. And we have been redeemed by God, by Jesus on the cross. And we have been called by God, by name. By name. God knows your name. God knows your name, and He says that you are mine. And Ephesians 2 verse 10 says something similar. He says, this is what Paul writes, he says, for we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. Again, God has made you. You are His workmanship. You are special. You are somebody. Whatever someone says to you, you are God's workmanship. That means you are somebody. You can look yourself in the mirror and say, I am somebody. I am God's workmanship. And well before you were even born or thought of, God has a plan for your life. God has a destiny for your life. God has awesome things, as the verse says, for us to do. But you know, probably the key part of the verse is that we shouldn't forget is that we should walk in them. God has prepared great works beforehand, but we should walk in them. In other words, we have a choice. We have a choice whether we're going to walk in the things that God has given us to do. We have a choice of whether we're going to work with God, partner with God in the plans that He has for our life. Again, it's not fate, but it's destiny. And destiny can change depending on how much we're willing to give to God. It really can. And you know something, we can make, I think COVID has made us make all kinds of excuses. We've lost, I feel like in COVID, even me included, sometimes we've lost the eye of the tiger. We've lost the confidence. Yeah. Not just in God, but in general, we've lost confidence. Some of us can't even sit in the same room with people and chat with them. We don't know what to do. We've lost it. Some of us have lost it. So that's why I want to reiterate today the purpose and the call of God on our lives. Some of us can make all kinds of excuses. We're too old. God can't use me. God doesn't have a plan for me. I'm too old. I'm retired now and I'm just gonna watch Pointless on an afternoon or whatever, which is pretty good Pointless to be fair. Jana's been watching it on maternity. I'm no good. I've got a few Pointless answers, the football ones anyway. But honestly, we can think that way. I'm too old. God can't use me. Or I'm too young. God can't use me. Or I've no talent, I've no real skill, I've no qualifications. I haven't got a good educational background. God can't use me. Or how about my history, my past, or my background? God can't use me. Wonder how many people in this room, I've been there and said that X, Y, and Z, God can't use me. But the wonderful thing is that all of us, if you have accepted Jesus Christ, you are called by name by God. And He wants to use you. He wants to use you. And that doesn't mean that you're going to be up here on the platform. Not that this is great or anything. This is what God's called me to do. But it's not as if you're going to be on the platform, on the street corners shouting, or on the television, or whatever it is, or be really famous. But just being faithful in the things that God has called you to do. It could simply be just being a caring person in the place that you work. Or being a good neighbour. Being a good father. Being reliable. Of course, we are all called to be evangelists to a sense. We're all called to go and preach the good news to everybody, but in our own way, in our own sphere. You are called by name by God. God knows your name, and guess what? He's calling you. He's calling you out upon the waters, as the song sang. He's got things for you to do. Wherever you are, He's got things for you to do. He's got people in your sphere who need care, who need your help, who need your prayers. He's got people in your sphere who maybe are hungry. He's got people in your sphere who are alcoholics or who are struggling in their marriages or whatever. He's got people around you. It's not just for the pastors to sort out. God is calling you by name. I don't know what it is, what He's calling you to, but I know for a fact with all my heart, God has called you by name for good works. For good works in Him that He prepared long in advance. But again, it's not a fate, it's a destiny. Number 2 then, to reach our God-given destiny, we have to let God direct our destiny. Proverbs 19 verse 21 says, many are plans in a person's heart. I had many plans when I was a young man, but it is God's plan that prevails. It is God's plan that trumps it all. It is God's plan which is the best plan of all. I'm going to be super vulnerable with you this morning. And I've discussed this with individuals, but you know, being in Wakefield has been tremendously hard for me and Janet. My family live in Bolton, it's only an hour away, of course. And Janet's family live more than an hour away, and it's 8 hours on a plane. That's not easy. I'm not playing the world's smallest violin, but it's not easy at all. Especially when you have a little baby, and you've got no grandparents around. We've got a great church and a great family, but it's not easy. And you know something, sometimes, I'll be honest, I've made all kinds of plans in my heart. We could be here, we could be in Canada. We could be, you know, Canada sounds good, doesn't it? You know, people always say to us, you know, why are you here in Wakefield? No disrespect, but, you know, literally though, to Janet, why are you here in Wakefield when you could be in Canada? And I'll come to the reason in a minute. Or Bolton. I go to Bolton, you know, once a month I try anyway. And when I go, it's just so refreshing because you're with your own family. Nothing like your own family, although that can cause problems. But admittedly, I have a very good family, a solid family, and I love them so much, and they just refresh me more than anybody. Or Wakefield, where is our future? But every time, you know, every time we've had all these plans ruffling in our minds, and by the way, it's not just been the ones. We've had all these plans, or all these ideas, or all these, you know, all these difficulties that we're trying to, you know, like move forward with. We said to God, it's your plan that prevails. It's your plan, God. I don't want to wake up in Canada and know that it's not your plan for my life. I don't want to wake up in Bolton and know that it's not your plan for my life. So God, what I'm doing is, many are plans in my heart, but we are putting these aside, and we want your plan for our life. We want that specific time, specific place, specific people. And we're here. We're here. Without God, I would not be here. If God didn't call me and Jana here, we would not be here. As nice as Wakefield is. We've got, you know, a few things in Wakefield that are nice. But we won't be here. We're here because God has called us here. And I'm going to be honest, there may be times while we're here, but we're still going to get the same things popping up in our mind and in our hearts, but we know that we're called by God here. And that is the most important thing. To know that you're called by God by name. To know what He wants you to do. To know where He wants you to be. Of course, there are different theologies about that. Does God call us to this specific place? Sometimes we've just got to, wherever we are, we've just got to do something as well. In fact, we wait many a time, where is God calling me? Where is God leading to me? Just do something where you are, where you're at. But for me, it is that specific place. It is that specific time. It is that specific task. But you know something, after I've said all that, I'm going to go over time here, I'm not bothered. After I've said all that, God will let us have what we go for. God will let us have what we go for. In other words, if we'd have truly decided that we wanted to go to Canada, we would have had what we would have gone for. So there's a destiny. It's not a fate, it's a destiny. And we have a choice to let God be the ones who directs our destiny. I want to say this, one of the greatest quotes that I've heard in my life. You'll never come second by putting God first. You'll never have second best in your life by putting God as number one. Never. Now that don't mean that life is going to be easy or luxurious. But it means that you'll be in God's will. You'll be living and walking in the destiny that God has for you. There's no greater thing than waking up in the morning and knowing, God, yes, I'm not perfect, but I'm here. I'm called by name by you. I'm here. I want to be obedient to you. I want to walk in the plans that you have for me. Not just generally, but every day. What do you have for me today, God? Here in Wakefield. What do you have for me today? New Life Church. What do you have for me today with meeting with this person for a coffee? Many are a plan in a person's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose, the Lord's plan, the Lord's destiny that prevails. So in order for us to reach our destiny, we have to let God direct our destiny. Final point this morning, third one. To reach our God-given destiny, we must let nothing hinder us from reaching our destiny. And this is from Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. And it says, let us throw off everything that hinders us. And the sin, so it's very specific, and the sin that so easily entangles us. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. There's a race marked out for us. There's a path, a plan marked out for us. God has a great plan marked out for us. God has a great purpose marked out for us. God has a great destiny marked out for us. And unfortunately, there are barriers that are going to get in the way of that. It's like a hurdle race. You seen the hurdles? You have to jump over them. There are many hurdles that get in the way of God's plan for our life. Many areas. And it's specific here. It says that sin will be a barrier to the plans that God has for us. Now sin, we talk a lot about sin, but basically sin is just being disobedient to God in the things that in the life that He's called us to live. It's not easy. It's not easy not to sin, but we can only do it with the power of God and the strength of God. But we need to every morning, don't we? Get rid of the sin that will weigh us down, that will stop us, that will hinder us. What better word there is than that? Hinder. It will hinder us from getting to where God wants us to be. We need to get in that place and we need to check ourselves before God, don't we? David said it in the Psalms 139. He said, God, search me and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any wicked way in me. And guess what he says? And lead me in the way of everlasting. Lead me, God. Walk with me, God. Let nothing hinder me, God, from what you want me to do in my life. Let nothing get in the way. Let no fear get in the way. Let no sin get in the way. We just need to come to that place, don't we, every morning. That continual repentance, that continual God searching our hearts, even the things that we don't see, but are there. We just need to come before God and let Him clean us up. Let Him, again, just pull away everything that will hinder us from seeing what God has for us today and what God has for us in the future. You know my story. of being, involved in, throughout my teens, late teens and into my 20s, being involved in drink and going out and doing this and that. God had a destiny for me, but I was never going to meet my destiny with the things that I was doing. And then it came to me, and God said them very words, look, if you continue the way you are, you'll never get to your destiny. You'll never find your purpose. You'll never fully meet the potential. You'll never walk in the great things that I've got for you to live. Nokia. Is it Nokia? Sounds like a Nokia. That's okay. It happens, doesn't it, to the best of us. But really, it came to that point in my life where God said, all this stuff is Indian. And again, I came to that place of repentance. I said, I don't want to live that way anymore, God. And from there, it was then that God then began to unravel his plan in my life. And I went to Cape and Ray. I studied there, met loads of great friends there. I met my wife there. We got married. When I was at Cape and Ray, I found this job. And now we have a baby. We're here in Wakefield. Because I got to that place in my life where I didn't want anything to hinder me. I didn't want anything to be a barrier to God's great plan for my life. It also says in this verse that let us run with perseverance. If anyone says the Christian life is easy, I don't think they can be living the Christian life properly. Because it's not easy. Yeah, there are good times, aren't there? There are good times. I'm sure many people in this room have had some good times, and there's some real blessing to come with the Christian life. There's some real, times where God just has us on a mountaintop. We're seeing miracles. We're seeing people saved. We're seeing just blessing in our life. But there are times where it's really difficult. Where it doesn't seem like there are any blessings that we can see. As I discussed before, the Christian life is a fight. It takes grit. It takes determination. It takes perseverance. It takes sacrifice. Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me. Deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow me. It's never meant to be easy. It takes grit, it takes determination, it takes perseverance. Paul, in his final letter to Timothy, he says, I've fought the good fight. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith. Now, Paul was just like, he saw Jesus. He was the most spirit-filled guy you could know, but he still needed to fight. He still needed to roll up his sleeves and fight and persevere. And not be lazy. He says it's been a struggle. He's so vulnerable. It's been a struggle. It's been a fight. It's been a tough race. It's not been a walk. It's been a race. But I've kept the faith. And I'm heading towards my destiny, which God has called me. And it's kind of sad because a few verses after, he starts talking about a friend of his called Demas. He says this, do your best to come to me quickly, for Demas, because he loved the world, has deserted me and has gone to Thessalonica. Demas would have been, again like Paul, he would have been with Paul on all these journeys. He would have seen people healed. He would have seen people come to faith in Jesus. He would have baptized many people. But he deserted Paul. He deserted the faith. He deserted his God-given destiny because he loved the world too much. He loved the things of this world too much. Now we are in the world, not of it. We've heard that before, haven't we? We are in this world, but we are not of it. That means there are things going out there, and we're not going to judge them because it's not our job to judge them. It's our job to judge each other. But there are things going on in the world that we shouldn't be a part of, that we can't get dragged into. Why? Because it'll hinder us from reaching our God-given destiny. Demas here, he wasn't prepared to pay the price. He He wasn't prepared to roll up his sleeves. He wasn't prepared to persevere, to really fight. To fight for God. To fight towards his destiny. How many people, bless you, but how many people in your families or people that you know in this church that have not been prepared to fight? That have not been prepared to roll up the sleeves and fight for the faith? How many people do you know? Probably lots. I know lots. Christian life is not easy. It's not easy. Paul says in Galatians 6 verse 9, he says to the Galatians, don't give up. He said, let us not grow weary in doing good. In other words, let us not grow weary in serving God in the good things that he's got for us. For at the proper time, we will reap a harvest. Guess what? If we do not give up. The crazy thing is that maybe Paul's saying that we can miss out on the harvest. If we give up, if we're not prepared to fight for our faith, if we're not prepared to walk in the things that God has for us, guess what? We can miss out on the harvest. That's stark. And there are times in our lives, in my life, where I've missed out on the harvest. Because I wasn't prepared to persevere. I wasn't prepared to fight. Or I wasn't prepared to deny myself. And look to God. It's very easy when walking with God, when life is good, to walk in the things that God has given us, isn't it? It's easy. But Paul asks us to never give up, even when it gets tough. We've got to fight the good fight. Run the race marked out for us, and at the proper time, we will reap the harvest. In other words, we will walk in the great destiny that God has for us. So persevere towards the race marked out for us. And the key to perseverance is not just our own strength. It's not by working out or by training our minds to be stronger. But in the same passage, here's the key to perseverance. Same passage that Paul was talking about Demas. You know, he's talking about fighting the fight. He's talking about running the race. He's talking about, people who've deserted him. He says this, at my first event, no one came to my support. Everyone deserted me. Not just Demas, but everyone deserted me. But guess what? The Lord stood by my side. The Lord stood by my side. He gave me strength so that through me the message might be proclaimed, fully proclaimed, and all the Gentiles might hear it. Everyone deserted me. That's how it's going to feel, guys. That's how it's going to feel. Everyone, you can feel like everyone, you've got these plans, you've got this purpose from God, you've got God speaking to you about the things he wants to do, and everyone might desert you, but guess what? God is by your side. And not just that, but God will give you the strength to run the race marked out for you. I was able to fight the good fight. I was able to run the race marked out before me. I was able to persevere towards my destiny because God is with me and he strengthens me and he has chosen me. He has chosen me. I'm going to invite the worship team forward before I just give